Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just give folks a couple more minutes to join from the waiting room or to get connected on their own. Welcome to today's webinar on the 2025-2026 Longleaf Planting Fund. I'm Karen Brown with the Longleaf Alliance, and I'm joined by my colleagues Lisa Lord and Sarah Crate. We will be walking you through our opportunity this year for some planting assistance. But before we get started with that, I just wanted to mention a couple things about the webinar format itself. This is being recorded, so it will be available to view at a later time or to share with any folks who might have missed joining it live. For those of you joining, your microphones and video have been automatically turned off, so you can just sit back and listen. We do have the chat disabled for this session as well. However, we may be sharing some things to you through that chat box, such as links we might mention or other kind of helpful resources. But we do encourage you to use the Q&A function throughout this talk. If you have anything that comes to mind that you'd like to have answered during this presentation, we'll address those towards the end of our session today. And if you submitted questions already through the Zoom registration, we do already have those, so there's no need to put those in again. We'll also address those during the course of the talk today. So before we get into the fund itself, I did just want to take a moment to introduce the Longleaf Alliance to those of you who are not quite so familiar with us. The Longleaf Alliance is a nonprofit organization, and we work across the Southeast US, and we're solely focused on the restoration, stewardship, and conservation of longleaf pine ecosystems. To our knowledge, we're the only organization that is all longleaf all the time, though we do that through a number of different key priorities. The first of which being restoration through partnerships. Some really key landscape scale partnerships across the range of longleaf are just really critical to moving the needle and conserving and restoring more acres of longleaf. Another way is through longleaf assistance in the form of technical expertise delivered by our staff to both landowners and our public land partners. We also provide assistance through funding opportunities like the one that we're discussing today. We conserve forests that support a diverse range of plant and animal species through the activities of much of our field staff, and again, back to supporting those key partnerships with agencies that share that goal. And through education and outreach programs that we can share longleaf related information directly to landowners and land managers who are doing that work on the ground. So why longleaf? We know that if you're here, you've probably have that question answered for yourself. We know that you may be planting for quite a number of different reasons, some of which you might be seeing on the screen now. And we know that longleaf can provide a multitude of these benefits. Often it's a combination of these, and sometimes priorities shift, and some of that list might get reordered as the years go by. But we know that longleaf can serve a number of different priorities for so many landowners that arrive at it. We recognize also that the economics of owning and managing a forested land is always a factor. So having a variety of forms of assistance for helping landowners along the way is something that we're very happy to be able to offer again this year in the form of the Longleaf Planting Fund. Lisa, did you want to kind of take us through what to expect on this?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that background, Karen, and thank you all for joining us today. So we're going to cover a couple of different topics today. We'll provide you some information about the planting fund itself, what it is, what we fund, the timing, so information like that, how to apply. We'll also be providing you just some kind of general reforestation tips, some things to think about, like the timing of ordering your seedlings and site prep. And then we'll kind of get into some frequently asked questions and then your Q&A at the end. So what is the Longleaf Planting Fund? So every year we kind of gather the information about the need that's out there. So the funding need for those of you that are planting, and we try to gauge the seedling need also from both private landowners and our public land partners. And because of the benefits that healthy forests provide, particularly longleaf, there are funders, both private foundations and public funders that are interested in supporting these projects. So once we've kind of assessed the need from the applications and the funding that's available to fund these projects, then we sort of match those two things together. Our funders include organizations like Arbor Day, the National Forest Foundation, and others.
Yeah, so couple other things to note about preparing to plant longleaf. Some things that can help make that process successful. So a healthy site prep is one of our keys to successes there. And by that, I just mean preparing the site in which you're going to plant. So that can be done through a number of different management activities. Selective forest herbicides are commonly used to knock back competition from other sometimes beneficial plants, but ones that we just want to knock back for a season to give longleaf a real advantage in the ground. This can also be done with mechanical treatments, particularly if it's kind of a really tough site or going from an agriculture site back into longleaf. There can be some advantages to using mechanical treatments as well. And prescribed burning, a good burn prior to planting, again, can just knock out some competition and give those longleaf seedlings the best start possible. A lot of these activities, the timing can vary, but in general, you're looking at that summer and fall before planting for many of these activities. That'll also be the time when you're figuring out how many trees you'll be needing to order, hopefully working with a forester to determine that and how to order those from different nurseries. Summer is the time to start to get those plans and orders in so that you can have your seedlings secured. Planting will typically take place during the winter season. So, it again can vary, but just broadly thinking November to February are really good months to plant. Generally suggest planting on the earlier side, just so that you're able to get better quality seedlings out of the nursery. Seedling quality has been at an all-time high over the last several years. So that's not normally an issue, but again, if you want to kind of have your order filled first, go ahead and plant early and notify the nurseries when you'd like to take delivery. But we are still here in the month of March, and we're still hearing about folks getting trees in the ground. So whatever works for you. After planting, follow-up treatments might be necessary. So particularly if we don't have a really great site prep taken care of, you can sometimes come back with a follow-up herbicide treatment to release those seedlings, knock out competition that is still hanging on, and kind of draining some resources off of those seedlings. That can be done in the first 1 or 2 years post-planting with some specific herbicide recommendations that are safe around longleaf. So that's an important caveat to pay attention to. And then prescribed burning, again, is going to become a regular part of managing those longleaf. You could begin to look at that 1 to 2 years post-planting as your first burn. And that would typically be done in the dormant season or the winter season with young longleaf.
Great. Thanks, Karen. So next we'll kind of get into kind of the bulk of the webinar today and talk specifically about the criteria, eligibility, details like that for the planting fund. So who is eligible? We have funders that are interested in funding private land and public land. So we can fund private land projects or federal or state or county land, public land projects. So we encourage everybody to apply. Projects can be located anywhere in the Longleaf Range. So we fund projects from Texas up to Virginia and down to Florida. So again, encourage anyone that's located anywhere in the Longleaf Range to apply. Many federal programs have what's called an adjusted gross income limit or an AGI limit, so a limit on your the adjusted gross income per year, and we have no AGI limit for this fund. Submission does not guarantee funding, so we only have a certain amount of funding. We often are working with our funders throughout the summer, even into the late summer. So we don't necessarily know what the need will be until the fund closes in June. And we also don't know the total sum of all the funding that we'll have available. So but please apply. We try to get as many landowners funded as we can with the funds that we have available. We do have a minimum, so minimum 5,000 trees to apply. So what kinds of things are we evaluating when we look at these projects? So many of our funders have certain priorities or factors that they're looking for that help meet their interest in supporting projects on the landscape, maybe in specific areas where they operate, or specific that help meet specific sustainability goals. And so all of the projects that come in, we rank those. Some common ranking factors include projects that are located in the local implementation team focus areas. So there are 18 of those across the range. It doesn't mean if you're not in one of those areas that you won't get funded. It just is one of the potential preferences. Rare species. So if you have gopher tortoises, red cockaded woodpeckers, or species like that that may kind of benefit from this habitat management, that's a potential ranking factor. Watershed benefits. So longleaf pine, both at the tree level and at the stand level, can provide both water quantity and water quality benefits. So there's interest in restoring longleaf to provide those benefits. And again, funders may have specific focal areas where they operate or states where they want to spend their funding. Next slide, Karen. All right, so here is the general kind of timeline for our funding. And let me mention too that this fund is a reimbursement. So as the landowner, you're responsible for making sure that your trees are secured, your contractors are secured to plant the trees. When the trees get planted, you'll submit your receipts and some other information to us, and then we'll reimburse you. So our application opened on March 3rd, and the application will close on or around June 1st. If there's some reason why you may not, you may have something that you don't have enough information to be able to submit within that timeline, and it may be into June, just let us know if you have some kind of special circumstance. So then from June through October, we go through an application review. We make sure that we have all of your information. We rank the various projects that we have. And we're also working with our funders to try to secure funding during that time. So around November or in the fall, usually it's late October, early November. We never know exactly what the time is, so that's kind of approximate. We will provide a notification of project approval. And so when you submit your application, you'll provide us information about the number of trees that you want to plant, how much those trees cost. And so we in our project approval, we'll approve a certain number of trees up to a certain cost per tree, and then we'll provide you with a maximum reimbursement amount. And then you will do your planting, as Karen said, from November to March, around that time frame. And then our deadline is April 1st to submit those reimbursement requests to the Longleaf Alliance. And when we provide you with that notification of project approval, we'll give you information about what we need in order to provide that reimbursement. So that'll include a W-9, some photos as verification that the planting was completed, and then also a copy of the invoice from the nursery. Next slide, Karen. All right, so what do you actually need to apply? So here's a list of the information that you need to apply. We also have a frequently asked questions document on our website. And I think Karen, if she hasn't already, will put that information into the chat. But that also has all the different things that you need to kind of gather up before you start your application. So you'll need the landowner name. If you're a forester or consultant, you can apply on behalf of the landowner. And you'll need to put either your contact information as kind of the project consultant or project coordinator, and your contact information. And then you can also include the landowner's contact information, a map of the planting area, project site photo, that's optional. GPS coordinates of the planting site. I mentioned those certain locations or geographies where funders might be interested in supporting tree planting. And so we need to know, where your project is located on the landscape. Acres to be planted. You can put in as many acres. There's no maximum for the number of trees or the number of acres. We, of course, only have so much funding to allocate, but at this point, we don't necessarily have a maximum, but we do have a minimum. So our minimum is 5,000 trees to be planted. The estimated cost. So include the cost per tree. So it's a great idea to contact the nursery that you'll be using to secure your trees to determine what the cost per tree might be. And in some cases, we do cover the cost of delivery also, so you can figure that into your cost per tree. And then if there's any additional project information, including your project goals, whether it's improving water quality, providing habitat for rare species, or just reforestation. All right, so here's some frequently asked questions. These are questions we're often asked about our planting fund. So what practices are covered? So for this fund, we primarily cover the cost of your seedlings. And I know, of course, you're incurring costs for site prep, and then also for planting. But this fund is specifically for planting, for covering the cost of those seedlings. We do ask what those other costs are because occasionally we do get other types of funding. So we have other cost share that comes in. often for specific locations. And then sometimes we may be able to kind of help match that funding with funding from the Planting Fund and cover some of those other practices. But for this fund, you're applying just for a reimbursement for those seedlings. Again, can I get paid before I plant my trees? No, I've mentioned a couple times, this is a reimbursement. Where can I order my seedlings? So we have, and I think Sarah will put that in the chat also. So we have a page on our website that shows you some of the nurseries across the range. So you can look at those, talk to those nurseries that are close to where you are to order your seedlings. And if you need more information about that, just reach out to us. I mentioned kind of that minimum number of trees. Can I submit a request if I applied for other cost share programs? Yes, you can. Let us know that you've applied for those other cost share programs. If you do get funded, just let us know. Sometimes those cost share programs will pay for site prep or planting, and that we can use our funds for the seedling part of your project. But we can't double dip necessarily. So just let us know what you've been funded for, and we'll work with you. And then we can always move the funds over to another project if you get funding from other programs. Sarah, why don't you talk a little bit about the application itself, and if folks need to make changes to the application?
I would be happy to. Thanks, Lisa. So the program that we use to compile our planting requests is an online question and answer format. And so at one point, you might realize that you need to come back to finish answering the questions if you don't have everything handy with you at that time. The program doesn't provide a way for you to specifically save your information. However, the start of your application is there permanently and until you complete it. And the way that you can kind of save it yourself is to copy the web address or the URL in your web browser and save it for later. So if you're on a computer, you can go to the top of the web browser, copy the URL and then save it someplace handy. You could email it to yourself or save it in an electronic document or a note. You can do the same thing on your phone. You could even text it to yourself using that ability, and you could kind of essentially save your application yourself that way. But the other thing that happens is if you go ahead and submit your application with answers to every question, you will receive a confirmation email from us that also contains that same URL or web address, and that will allow you to edit your submission. And so if you aren't sure, quite about an answer, you can go ahead and submit and then receive that email with that link so that you can make future edits, and you can go in and go ahead and do that yourself. Everybody's applications or requests are available for edits until we close the fund, which is the June 1st deadline that Lisa mentioned earlier. So feel free to do that. The other thing is that if what I just shared with you about copying the URL is a problem, or you didn't find that confirmation email, I am always available and willing to help locate your existing application so you don't have to recreate your efforts. So you can email me and I can provide that link so that you can go ahead and make those changes yourself.
Great. Well, I have a couple of questions that have come in from this audience, if I can just pose those. So a lot of them I know were already addressed either through this FAQ slide or directly in Lisa's other portions. So that was really made clear. But a couple of specifics. So about eligibility. Are state agencies eligible to apply, and are county conservation programs or county or municipal entities eligible for this as well?
They are. They sure are, Karen. And so most of the funding that we have is for private lands, but we do get funding for public lands. Local governments, like counties, are considered private lands in a way. They're kind of in that category, so we can often use that private land funding for those county or local government lands. But it also kind of helps us assess the overall need for planting cost share, which helps us maintain the amount of cost share or get additional cost share for future years, and then also gauge the amount of seedlings that are needed annually.
Right. That's an important feedback to the nurseries as well. Okay. Another question: are matching funds required?
So matching
from the applicants, I think is what they mean.
They are not. So they are not required. Sometimes we will request those matching funds. And so those matching funds would be essentially called in kind. So we would be able to use the amount of funding or the amount of cost that you've put into your site prep and into the planting costs to help match a grant, often a federally funded grant. But we will kind of reach out to you if that's the case. So, but it's not necessarily required.
Okay. And then there were a couple that I'll just kind of lump together. I believe you covered this pretty well early on about our funding sources and how we kind of put them together to determine what we can fund here. But will some of the uncertainty around federal funding have an effect on this opportunity going forward? I know it's hard to really predict that, but there's a couple of questions kind of in that vein.
Yeah, I think we don't know. I think there's a lot that is continuing to change and evolve. Again, we'll kind of work with different funders over the summer and determine how much funding we have as we to fund projects as we go into the fall. So I suspect that the amount of funding that we have may be lower than previous years, but I don't know that for sure. I do know that this year, some landowners were impacted by that. And so some funds are frozen for this current planting year. And I think we're hopeful that those funds will be unfrozen. So it was certainly kind of unprecedented for us that happened. And so I think going forward into this next year, we're aware that could happen, and we're sort of taking some different steps to kind of mitigate that those potential impacts in future years.
And once we know about that funding level over the summer, that's what helps us make our decision.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That's all I have from attendees for Q&A. If anyone has additional ones, continue to use that Q&A box until the end of our webinar, and we'll circle back to that at the very end in case we have any new ones. But for now, we'll move on about kind of staying in touch with us.
So you all have found your way here today for the webinar and are interested in the Planting Fund. And so that might mean that you're already connected to us through our primary forms of communication. But if not, we would love for you to stay connected to us and to all things Longleaf by utilizing both our free monthly e-newsletter. The QR code is there on your screen, so you can go ahead and scan that there. I'll also drop it in the chat for you, where you can go ahead and subscribe to receive that email. It's usually just once a month. Sometimes there's a few bonus emails like this month announcing the fund being open and announcing the webinar. In addition, the Longleaf Alliance produces a quarterly magazine, the Longleaf Leader, and our members at a $75 level and up are entitled to a complimentary subscription for that magazine. And the magazine has a variety of different content, including landowner features, information about programs like the Longleaf Planting Fund, as well as really helpful information about longleaf management tips, ecology, biology. And so if you are interested in that, please also scan the QR code to learn more about the Longleaf Leader.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us again today. We just want to wrap up by saying contact us, reach out to us if you've got any questions. I know as you have a chance to kind of think about some of the things that we've shared today, you may have a question tomorrow or later this week. For general questions about the fund, eligibility, kind of general FAQs, reach out to me. If you've got questions specifically about the application, the technology, going back to your application, or if you didn't get that confirmation, reach out to Sarah. But we're always happy to help you. And even if you've got questions kind of beyond about longleaf restoration in general, we're happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one more final note. We will have this recording available for later viewing. That can be found on our YouTube channel, and it'll also be linked on the Planting Fund page on our website, longleafalliance.org. So once you're on there, you can find all the information about this, including a link to this recording. Give us a couple days to get that put together, but it'll show up there within the week. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. I hope this answered some questions, just kind of shed a light on this opportunity to determine if it's a good fit for you. And we hope to see you all out there. Take care.